Will he or won't he be the long-awaited answer at the 5 behind Nikola Jokic, Jonas Valančiūnas? Is he going to go play in Europe? Is that going to happen? Is he going to be in Greece? Are the Nuggets going to hold their feet to the fire and say, listen, if you want to go over to Europe, you got to break this thing out. We're not going to spend a single dime on you. That's the big news around the NBA, certainly here in the Mile High City, is whether or not what felt like a gift for the Nuggets has now turned into kind of a nightmare, considering the backup center market, while already thin at the beginning of free agency, is dangerously thin right now. I didn't think this was going to be a possibility, but you know what? When things seem too good to be true,
sometimes they are too good to be true, Raj.
And should we have seen this coming? Dario Saric for free? Maybe we should have seen something like this coming.
Even if you don't end up with Jonas Valančiūnas, you still shed Dario Saric's contract. Am I right? That's still a win.
It's still a win.
And you still freed up financial opportunities for, say, an Al Horford.
Is Horford going to come to Denver? I find myself completely agreeing with Vic Lombardi. And Vic goes, dude, he's going to Golden State or he's retiring. I don't think Al Horford's coming here.
Why not?
Because there has been no sort of chatter that has pushed him toward Denver ever.
Does he like winning titles again?
Ever.
But doesn't he like titles?
Well, we all think that everyone loves titles, but then LeBron James opted into a $53 million player option this year.
And also he's hanging out in Cleveland. Just hanging out and working out in the practice gym in Cleveland.
I mean, he still lives in Akron.
I know. Well, first of all, why would you ever choose to live in Akron, Ohio?
I think the whole concept of like, oh, just because you're an NBA player without a ring, or an NBA player at the end of their career, like Horford is, end of his career, it doesn't automatically mean that you are a ring chaser. I've come to learn that pretty quickly in the NBA.
It sure feels like Al Horford has won 5 titles in his career that has spanned since basically you were a child, Raj.
Well, yeah. He came out of Florida in like 2004 or something like that?
You know how many NBA titles he's won?
None?
1.
When did he win?
Celtics.
Oh, last year.
That's it.
Back up with the Celtics.
And it feels like he's been associated with NBA championship teams because he has played in the playoffs a ton. He's been an all-star 5 times. Back to Jonas Valančiūnas.
16 playoff appearances.
Back to Jonas Valančiūnas. Evan Sidery. Do you know anything about Evan? He's a Evan Sidery is an NBA contributor for Forbes magazine. So he's an NBA financial guy. 2 hours ago, tweeted out that Jonas Valančiūnas' agent notified Panathinaikos, is that right? Close? That he wanted to leave the NBA, but that he never communicated that same desire with the Nuggets. Denver was furious over the lack of communication, but Valančiūnas still wants to leave for Europe. Therefore, we find ourselves in the ultimate standoff between a European basketball player that wants to finish out the latter part of his career in Europe and a franchise that desperately needs a number 2-5.
Dude, the answer is screw you.
I agree. Well, I don't care
There is no loyalty whatsoever to a player who has never stepped foot in that gym. The answer is screw you.
You don't let him out of his contract. It's the bottom line.
If we can come to some sort of agreement where you guys buy out the remainder of the contract and we are left with no dollars whatsoever owed to you, I guess be my guest. But if there is a single cent that the Valančiūnas camp wants paid back to them in terms of a mutual buyout,
by way of the Nuggets paying any of that,
screw you.
You're out. You're done. What about the Kings? What do you think the Kings are thinking about this?
That's the most interesting thing. There is no way, right? There's no way Sacramento does this deal without already knowing this a little bit. There's no way the Kings don't move, or that they move on from a guy who is as viable as a backup center or a true center option on some teams in the NBA, even being this old and this late in his career. Like, I get it. I know he's 33. I know he's kind of at the end of, he's played a very long time in the NBA. I totally get that. Still very viable option. And that's the reason why the Nuggets have looked at him. That's the reason why we were singing the praises last week when it happened on the first day of free agency, or at least the first day of the moratorium period. There's no way that they didn't know that he wanted out, right? Because if they make this trade, what that allowed them to do is you cut the buyout in half, right? Sarge was like 5 and change. Valančiūnas is 10 and change. You essentially cut the buyout knowing that you were going to trade for the players and buy Sarge out on the other side, that you were going to cut your cost directly in half. That's the reason why Sacramento makes the deal. It's very clear. Are they up a creek without a paddle without Valančiūnas? Maybe. Depends how high you are on Deron Holmes.
Last week doesn't feel quite as exciting.
No, it still feels good.
Feels good.
It doesn't feel, holy crap, they're right there and can win a title. Because then you still have the main big question mark is who plays the non-Jokic minutes. Mm-hmm. And then you go back to what they've tried to do for how many years, which is stretch a 4 into a 5, and it has failed every time.
I hate to bring everything back to college football, but there was an era before unlimited transferring where the school held the rights to give a player the opportunity to enter the transfer portal. You had to sign off on it as a school. That oftentimes felt very similar to this Jonas Valančiūnas situation, where a player would come up to you and say, hey, I want to transfer to Purdue and follow my previous head coach, Jeff Brom from Western Kentucky, to Purdue. And I said, nope, you're stuck here. But you know what almost every time happened? They ended up getting out of it because they didn't want to play for you. And that's what I feel like is the ultimate answer to all this, is that Jonas Valančiūnas isn't going to be a Denver Nugget.
Oh, I hate to think that.
It's true.
I really hope that Vic is right, and this is just a money play.
What is the money play side of it, though, for Jonas Valančiūnas and his agent? His contract's pretty locked in as a Nugget that you inherited from Sacramento.
Can you find a way to change the player option next year, or rather the club option to a player option? Can you find a way to guarantee more money? Can you extend the contract so it's way bigger than what was it, Pathanakos?
But then you set a really dangerous precedent for trade, like, so that you can agree to terms on a trade, but the player, and this is a situation the NBA is going to have to interject into. Now the player can just say, I want to go and play in that league over there overseas. Therefore, now I am in a position of bargaining. That's not how these things work. When you're traded and you acquire a contract and a player, you acquire exactly the terms of that contract and that player. And so it really has to be, I am quitting / I am foregoing the entirety of my financial liability, or I am going to play that out as it was signed by the Denver Nuggets. You can't, that's a terrible precedent that's set. Because going forward, the NBA's got a problem with their overseas, counterparts in Europe or China or wherever these other leagues are, where you can now utilize those leagues as leverage to up your current salary with the team that had just acquired you on certain terms. That doesn't work that way. It can't work that way.
Denver's going to play hardball, man. They are going to hardline this. If you want to leave, we're not paying a single cent. That's it. You guys have to handle that buyout, and then you can go back overseas. Or you play for us. You stay for a year, you hang out with Nikola Jokic, you maybe win one. And no, Cindy's right. Sacramento did this a couple of years back. Like, this is not their first rodeo to have a European player that doesn't want to play here in the States anymore, trade away that contract and have it bought out by another team. So it's a very, very concerning development after a week in which we looked at this Nuggets roster and went, this is the closest to the 2022 champion, or 2023 championship rather, that we've ever seen them. Nothing changes with the Saric deal. Like, this trade is done. This is the Valančiūnas situation is now a Nuggets problem, not a Kings problem. Saric is the Kings issue and not the Nuggets. Like, that's all done.
You got rid of
Saric.
Saric.
So
and his contract.
At the end of it, you are right. if Valančiūnas doesn't play a single minute for the Nuggets and they don't have to pay him a single cent and he goes and plays in Athens this coming year.
Still a net positive.
Still a net positive.
But not compared to what you were expecting in return, which was the fleecing of all fleecings. We got rid of Dario Saric, the player. We got rid of Dario Saric's liability contractually. And oh, by the way, we got an amazingly 6'11", 280-pound bearded Lithuanian to play for you. Well, that last part isn't going to be part of the deal. Probably. At least the way I see it. I hope so. I hope I'm wrong. It just feels like his agent, talk about Jonas Valančiūnas, and he himself have been floating a lot of this information to media members to try to get away with the fast one. And ultimately, they're not going to get away with the fast one and get compensated for it. You can't. You just don't. It's not how it works. But at the same time, Jonas Valančiūnas is probably not going to be playing for the Nuggets.
I hope you're wrong. I hope this is just somehow a long-term money play, a guarantee play from Valančiūnas, or simply a miscommunication between player, agent, and organization. Because if you look at what if we were having this conversation 5 days ago, just around Jonas Valančiūnas, before the 4th, it was party in the streets, man. You looked at this roster and you went, that is a roster that can go up against Oklahoma City even when they are fully healthy. And you think that last year's roster, with all those injuries and all that bad blood and the chaos that was going on last year at the end of the season, they brought them to 7 games. You think that roster, the new one, with Cam Johnson and not a incredibly hobbled MPJ, with Aaron Gordon with 2 legs and not just one, with a true backup center and not 0, that roster can compete.
At what point does the horse whisperer, Nikola Jokic...
Just because their names end with IC doesn't mean that they're best buddies. I've heard all of this, like doesn't Nikola Jokic make a call? Just because they end in itch does not mean they're homies. I guarantee not everyone else in the NBA loves LeBron James, but every time that he calls, anytime that something happens around the league, what if LeBron calls? Well, LeBron wants it. Not everyone wants to play with him.
Yeah, but it's Nikola Jokic, man. He's such a lovable, horse-loving figure. Apparently, Jonas Valančiūnas was tired of getting owned by Nikola Jokic.